Everyone. Welcome to February's speaker series. We're very pleased to have you all here this evening for a very exciting presentation. For those of you who have attended in the past or have not attended in the past, Dirigo Labs Speaker Series is a monthly event where founders and leaders share advice on how they overcame challenges, capitalize on their target market, and develop their products, providing you with actionable insights for your own products and processes. For more information, you can find us online at dirigolabs.org under our speaker series. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this evening's conversation. This free event is presented by Dirigo Labs and is sponsored by the Harold Alfond Institute for Business Innovation at Thomas College, Valley Beverage, and Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space. In addition, this conversation is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. This evening's conversation is presented by Ryan Beaumont, Principal of RM Beaucorp Corporation, and Emalee Kuchar, Dirigo Labs' very own Program Manager. In this speaker series, Ryan will discuss his experience with small business innovation research and his grant application journey, and Emalee will share insights on navigating the application process and unlocking funding opportunities for your groundbreaking ideas. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect, thank you. So I get to go first. I'm going to do just a really brief overview of what these funding programs are. How many of you have heard of SBIR, STTR programs? Okay, a lot, most of you. And how many of you have never heard of it before? Perfect. All right. That's our goal, was to raise awareness of these programs. I'm going to let Ryan do most of the talking today just because he has the actual experience applying for these. I just wanted to kind of level set everyone as to what they actually are. And feel free to interrupt me with questions if you need to. No, just kidding. Okay, so what are these programs? These are federal programs that are designed to fund risky R&D projects. And they're intended for products, services, other types of projects that might not get funding otherwise. So when you think of like somebody's working on a really innovative, let's say science-based product, they go to a VC and they say, no, you haven't proved it enough. They go to a bank, they say, no, you have a product. This is kind of intended to fill that hole. So small business innovation research, otherwise called SBIR, otherwise called SBIR, depending on who you're talking to, and small business technology transfer, also called STTR or STTRs. If you look at the numbers, any agency, federal agency that has more than $100 million of budget is required to put 3.2% of that budget towards the SBIR program, which actually ends up being quite a bit of money. And for small business technology transfer, the agencies with greater than $1 billion, so the big agencies, are required to put 0.45% of their budgets towards these programs on top of the SBIRs. And I should also, before I forget to mention, these are non-dilutive funding. So that's kind of the big fun word for everybody. So your IP is yours. And there's no equity. So these are the 11 participating agencies. You can see it's quite a span from, of course, DoD, which many of us probably could guess, but you also have like EPA, DOT, NASA, USDA, and the Department of Commerce incorporates both NIST and NOAA, which I thought was just kind of an interesting place to put those. The ones that have the yellow circles are the ones that also have STTR programs. So there's 11 with SBIR, and there are, let me count, make sure I count 5 that also have STTR programs. And I think maybe I forgot to mention on the last slide, but the distinction with the STTRs are that you have to work with a nonprofit research institution. And there's a certain percentage of work that organization has to do versus yours. So kind of maybe the best and the worst of this program is that all of these agencies are very unique in their application process, in the sense that they all handle it differently. They all have different submission deadlines, different amounts that they award, different topics that they ask for. It's pretty unique based on each of these agencies. So for example, the NSF actually doesn't publish topics. They just say, give us your interesting, innovative things and we'll tell you if we want to fund it or not. Whereas agencies like the DoD have very specific, like, I want you to solve this particular problem. And then agencies like USDA actually have very broad topic areas. So they have like small and mid-sized farms. So you can submit any topic that's an innovative solution that helps small and mid-sized farms. Or they have rural and community development. which is one that's sort of like anything that you can think of that is innovative and would help rural and community development. So some of the topics are very broad, some of them are very narrow, and that's probably one of the trickiness about navigating SBIRs and STTRs is figuring out where you fit within this many agencies. Can anyone guess which of these agencies has the largest SBIR and STTR budget? DOD, they have billions of dollars that go into these programs, and they're split out, of course, by our Army, Navy, Air Force, a bunch of other ones. But the tricky part with those is many of them are for the the Army wants to support things that they could end up buying at the end. So they tend to be sort of very specific things. So these are sort of the general phases of these projects, and I'll say phase 1 and phase 2 are really the SBIR, STTR, that's where the grant awards are. Phase 0 is some of these agencies offer an application assistance program. So like DOE has some webinars you can participate in, some other types of resources that help you write these if you're a first-time applicant. Many of the agencies don't have this program, and also there's some entrepreneur support organizations that also have programs called phase 0. So it's kind of like generally application assistance, but you won't necessarily find it everywhere. Phase 1 is sort of where everyone starts. This is concept development. It's 6 months to a year, generally for a project. 50K to 250K, which obviously is a very wide range, depending on the agency, and has a 13 to 30% grant rate. So they're very competitive. And I think if SBIR, STTRs were just phase 1s, no one would apply. It's not worth your time. But where the big money is the phase 2s. So these are your product development, they're longer awards, and they're a lot more money. So it's 500K to 1.5 million, depending on the agency. And that's sort of where you really get some, life-changing award dollars. Another cool thing about phase 2s is that you're only competing against other phase 1s. So the award rate is much higher. So it's 30 to 54% for those. There are some agencies that you can go direct to phase 2, but those are primarily the DoD agencies that have the big bucks to spend. Phase 3 is not considered SBIR funding, but it is if you're doing a project in which the agency is the customer itself. So once again, a lot of the DoD agencies, if you've been through phase 1 and you've been through phase 2, and it's a product that like the Army wants to buy, they'll consider that to be a phase 2 or phase 3. And those can be many millions of dollars, and they're not restricted to certain caps or limits. So those are sort of the phases. So now we get to eligibility for these programs. The first couple are pretty simple. So you're more than 50% US owned. So that means if you have 2 co-founders, one's not a US citizen, the other is, as long as there's a 50% ownership for the US citizen, you're good. You have to be a for-profit entity, so like Dario Labs could not apply for these programs. All of the work has to be done in the US as part of your project, which can be a little tricky if you're working with like foreign consultants or foreign universities. You have to have less than 500 employees. That's sort of an easy one. And then the 2 on the bottom are probably the most important. It has to be an R&D focused project. And how we like to say this is engineering projects are something that will work, you just kind of have to engineer the solution. Whereas R&D, there's always an inherent amount of risk that what you're doing will not work. And that's sort of a uniqueness to this program that I think is actually very cool, is that as you see on the bottom, there is an element of risk to what you're doing. So when you go to VCs, your whole speech is like, oh, there's no risk, this will definitely work. Here's all the reasons it will work. Here's all my scientists that say it'll work. When you're applying for SBIR and STTR programs, sure, you're still saying that, but they understand that there is a risk that what you're doing will not work. And that's sort of like what they're looking for. So here I pulled 6 examples of SBIR grants that have gone to companies in Maine in the last 3 years, just to kind of show you the variety and also the different agencies and sort of how they're different. just to kind of pull out a few, many of you might recognize Johnny's Seeds, which is based in Winslow. So they won a USDA SBIR for an efficient green spinner for improving food safety. So not necessarily a project that you would immediately look at and be like, that's definitely SBIR. And that's why these are a little bit difficult to tell, and that's why there's help. Some of them are more traditional that you're like, yeah, obviously. So like a cost-effective means of culturing large volumes of microalgae. This one was actually an STTR with Bigelow Labs. And then another one, many of you might be familiar with the app called Inkene.
Yeah.
So he actually won an SBIR from the NSF for AI-enabled African language database. So kind of an interesting one that, once again, you might not necessarily have thought was a fit. And then this one is also a USDA one that's for tough spent grains. So this is sort of like a snack, but they're using wasted grains for brewers to make it. So it applies. And I assume that's probably under the small and mid-sized farms category, but kind of a unique fit that you wouldn't necessarily see. And then my last slide is just kind of a general list of our services when it comes to this SBIR, STTR grants. There are a lot of support organizations that can help you with these. So just kind of a quick rundown of what we do is we can help you evaluate your eligibility. We can help obviously educate on the program like we're doing right now. We can advise on your agency fit and topic area, sort of help you search through the topics. We can connect you with research partners and potential PIs if you are not a scientist yourself, but you might need a scientist to help you with a project. We can help you brainstorm a project. We can help connect you with grant writers. We can help connect you with grant review resources. For anyone not familiar, Maine Technology Institute has a really great TAP assistance program, specifically for writing and reviewing these types of grants. So we have a good relationship with them. We can work with you on that and assist with a commercialization plan. I think Ryan will probably talk a lot about this, but these programs are sort of focused on this risky R&D, but it's like vitally important that it actually has a place in the market and that you actually can make money on this. So it's kind of like those two things are very important in these applications.
So the commercialization plan is important to the process of applying,
Correct.
but the element of risk still needs to be there for, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I know, it is
Yeah, interesting.
I think it's we've run a few companies through like our eligibility sort of like, and you always get to the question of like, is there a risk that this project fails? And everyone immediately, no.
Yeah.
You're like, wrong answer. You actually, yes, and here's what we're gonna do to de-risk that thing through this. Yeah.
It's more of a thing for phase 2 of the commercialization plan.
Yeah. But you can say like, well, I'm gonna make a car that drives to the sun. And you're like, cool, risky, innovative, R&D, awesome. But like, does it actually have a place in the market? And if the answer is no, you're probably not gonna get these awards. Any questions before I turn it? Yes.
I've had similar experience with DARPA. Is DARPA like separate from this when they're doing their funding for these separate projects, or they using, is this the mechanism they're using? So we've gone after some DARPA dollars.
Yes and yes. Yes, DARPA is one of those fun agencies that exists under DoD that has SBIR awards, but I recently went to a conference where like the DARPA lady was talking and she was like, I send people straight to phase 2 all the time. I send people to phase 3 all the time. Like they kind of make up their own rules when it comes to.
Yeah, there was one where they were like, we didn't open call, we're like, we're gonna give you $1 million just to test this thing you want to do, and we're gonna give you 5 people. And we don't care if you all fail, we just want someone to try.
Yeah, I think that probably was not SBIR funding, but I think DARPA is also interesting where like their whole purpose is doing research. So I'm sure a larger part of their budget is part of this, but. Jake, did you have a question?
I think he answered that. I was curious, you will walk through that timeline in different stages, and if you could hop different stages, or if you needed to follow that path on it.
Generally, no. Most agencies, you'll apply for a phase 1, and then if you win that, then you apply to phase 2, and then if you win that, you're done. But it's these like if you're applying for Army, you might go phase 1, phase 2, and then Army says, I actually wanna buy that. Then technically it's phase 3, but it's like not real. You know what I mean? Michelle,
I've heard that you can apply for multiple phase ones, so you can like keep applying for multiple phase twos, like up to a certain amount of like number of times, so you don't have to actually go vertically. You could say, okay, I wanna, once I get into phase 2, I can apply again for another phase 2 and another phase 2. Did you find that?
I don't know all the rules with those. I know that you can apply to multiple things, certainly, but I think probably each agency.
I can take that one. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yes, answer is yes. If you're the PI on every single one of those awards, eventually some reviewer is gonna say, okay, how burdened are you? You can't possibly put 100% of your time into something you budgeted 200% of your time for, right? So there's usually, when you get the award or right before, you'll have to fill out a judgment time request. I think this is the way they still do it, with how many other awards you have going on right now. Assuming you're really successful, you have 5 others, and you're listed at 10% of this one, 20% of, you have to like justify that you can do what you say you're gonna do. But there's no limit otherwise.
I was also thinking, like, say you got SBIR 1,
Yeah,
and then you apply the next year for SBIR 1.
Yep.
You get it again, so
Yeah.
you can do it a number of times, not in the same year, but.
yep, yeah, and especially for different topics. You might not be able to hit the same product or the same topic with 2 different applications, 3 different applications, but you might be able to. You just, obviously, your work can't overlap. You can't get paid twice for the same body of work that you're doing.
One more quick thing. When I was looking at the examples of the product or the awards, it showed, Johnny Select Seed had a. I can't remember what it was something along the lines of manufacturing or producing their plants, and it looked like a very specific kind of machinery or whatever it was. Could you add multiple different budgetary use cases within your application, like say, my software, like half my project's development and half of it's for the marketing to push the actual product? Does it have to be specific to the actual product, or are there any limitations there?
They will they'll look at your budget to see that you're spending it on certain things. There's certain things that aren't allowed, like marketing is not allowed in your budget. So you'll have to find dollars from elsewhere to, do that type of work. But generally speaking, if it's towards your specific aims of your research or your product development, that's all allowable.
Oh, it's a good transition.
Okay. All right, so, I'm Ryan. Went through this process of applying, receiving awards, starting back in 2013 for, our idea, which was, let's see. This, I'm an engineering consultant contractor. I don't just consult, I contract. I don't like to just talk about work. I like to do work. So I'm a contractor. I've been doing this ever since 2006. So I have some relationships with people at universities, and one of them from University of Maine approached me. His name's Vince. He's down in the corner there. He said, "Hey, Ryan, long time, no talk. Good to, catch up. We got this weird product, and there's these 2 kind of like crazy people in social work that invented it because they needed it for themselves. They like exercise. They like being outdoors. We developed it inside the university, but it's not really a commercial product. It's 50% of the way there. It's actually like 10% of the way there, but it's close. It's useful, it's functional, but they're really excited to bring it to market. We know that you're kind of like doing some of this with other people. What do you say?" Like, okay, sure, I'll tackle this. So first thing is, I didn't really get it. Like, looking at it looked like a bike. You can go back, it's got some wheels, like it looks by scale. I mean, can you tell how big that is from there? This thing is like up to here on me, by scale. Like, I don't even understand what's going on. So Liz, I have to say, I get pitched these types of crazy projects. Like every month, like, okay. Tell me what this is, like, I'll tell you if I can help, I'll tell you if I can't help, I'll do my best, whatever it is, I will point you in the right direction if I can't help you directly. But, so I've, in my like sort of trying to get to what the problem that Liz is trying to solve with this, I'm an engineer, so it's like, all right, root cause analysis. You ask the 5 whys, it's not really focus group, but it's like the best I can do as an engineer. So you just keep asking why, till you get at the root of, what it is. So I did this with Liz in one of our first meetings. I said, Liz, so why'd you invent this? And she's like, well, she likes to run. I really need something to help me run a 5K. So why? Why do you need this device? I have balance issues due to a disability and it provides support when I'm running. So, why not go for a walk with a rugged walker? Because all walkers are ugly and make me look disabled. Like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. This isn't just about a product to her, it's solving some other problem. So why running? Aren't there other ways to exercise? I do other types of exercise with gym equipment, but I wanted to run outside. Like, oh, outside, okay, this is starting to make sense. And why? Because I like the sun and being outdoors, Ryan, you dope. Don't you like exercising outside? There's a lot of people like me. So right away, I like her personality. Okay, this is one of many conversations we've had. We go back and forth like this. But for me, the thing was, yeah, you saw that thing, that looked like a bike. I love bikes, like the engineering part of this was either, making this more functional, more useful, more, all the features, that was the easy part of this problem. The hard part to me was, you're asking me, how do you take this to market? And I mean, I need to understand the customer, the problem, the value proposition, all those things you're probably like threading through with your own products, your own ideas. When you presume that something solves a problem before you've actually kind of done the deep dive, are you really at the right solution? Is there other ways to solve the problem? So to me, like I started to have some of these bigger questions. And that's where, where the SBIR program is looking for you to head. You've got this idea of a product or a solution of some sort. But did you really ask all the questions to get to that? And so I just sort of, from outside, they spent 3 years on this, but from outside, I'm sort of backing up and saying, okay, what's really going on here? And then right away I found, wow, I'm diving into an area that I had no personal experience in. And actually the team, Liz and Steven, if I back up, these 2 people right here, they are in the School of Social Work. So like, okay, well, I kind of see that the team is sort of here, there's some knowledge and expertise in social science, in disabilities, in kind of an area where we need to head in order to solve these problems. And look, they're researchers, they're at a university, they can conduct these studies, they can put together a grant proposal, like, okay, I'm here to help, but I'm gonna need some help from you guys too. So it seemed like right away, there's tons of, I've worked on many products and, there's kind of like small, you can sort of get a gauge, is this gonna need a little bit of money to get off the ground, or is this gonna need a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of thinking to get off the ground? This one to me looked right away like it needs a lot of thought, especially if this is going to be a big market. For me, right away, it seemed like this might head towards a health and wellness market more so than just a recreation market. If we can unlock the nut of getting payers, providers to prescribe exercise, thinking big, I think that's the nut we need to crack with this. So in order to get there, obviously you need a huge body of research to support that whenever you're going into the realm of health and wellness. And when I was going through my accelerator program in 2016, heard this talk about somebody prescribing food as medicine. I was like, oh, exercise kind of, it's an analogous sort of thought there. So I was kind of here in 2013, and maybe you're in the same position right now, thinking, is this program applicable to what you're working on? Is it worthwhile? And so that's what I'm here to probably maybe steer you. I don't really want to tell you yes or no. I just want to present what it was for me, and my experience. We've already heard from Emalee that addressing a research question or a technical challenge is one of the sort of the fundamental things with every government agency there. They're not interested in thinking small, and nobody is. If you really want to take your idea, to the moon, you kind of have to, if you haven't already, like, step back and think bigger. And I was told this over and over. It irritated me, like, yeah, I'm already thinking big. No, you're never thinking big enough. You're never thinking big enough, right? So this product, like, I was the outsider sort of stepping back, thinking bigger. And you haven't already done that with other people, pitched your idea or asked for help from an advisor, it's a great exercise. We have somebody else from outside to really, like, kind of give you guys some grounding or an alternative perspective. So the first thing was, the first two for us were satisfied. And then the next thing is, which government agency does your idea fit with? And that's, there's some time in thinking about that. As Emalee said, every agency has its own mission. And SBIR is, I'm not sure how they view this, but SBIR is a cash set aside of their budget. They have to award this money for this program. So depending on your program office, they may see SBIR as, something that's great for small business. They might see it as a burden. I don't really know how they see this internally. But it has to fit with your agency's mission. And when you look at National Institute of Health, which is where we applied, there's institutes within the National Institute of Health. So there's National Institute on Aging, National Institute on Infectious Diseases, Childhood Diseases. And then it gets deeper. There's like scientific review groups within each agency that are actually going to be reviewing your proposal. That was my first experience with that level of, trying to figure out where this fits. I've applied to a DOE SBIR in the past as well, and that was to a specific topic. So my experience with that versus NIH was very different. So as you dive in, you'll see sort of the same. Whew.
Well, that's gonna happen.
Ooh, there got dry. The fourth thing, there's registrations. So when you decide, yes, this program is a good fit for me, now you have to register your for-profit entity with 5 or 6 different federal entities so that you can apply. So all these things have to be done before you apply. Now, there's resources at MTI to help guide you through, the right order to do these things in, because sometimes you have to apply to one before you can apply to the other to get your number to apply to the other. Don't worry, that somebody can walk you through that. It's irritating. You do it once, but then it's over, but don't expect it to take a week. You want to allow a few weeks for just that part of the process. And then the last thing is who's preparing the application? Is it you? Are you a good grant writer? Maybe. Do you know everything you need to know in order to put together a full proposal? Think about it. You might have various aspects of your proposal that would be helpful to just give somebody else to write. I'm talking about, well, geez, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 pages of, maybe 40 for some, of documents to put together. For NIH, there's just the proposal for the work is 6 pages. Then you have specific aims. You have like 4 or 5 different versions of concise descriptions of your project, you have bio sketches, you have facilities documents, equipment documents. Then the budget, your budget justification, phase one, your commercialization plan is actually only 2 sentences. For NIH, DOE is different, DOD is different. Then phase two is bigger, you know, and as Emily said, you're starting with phase one, which is, you know, an order of 100,000 to get to phase two, which is an order of 1 million. So, you know, maybe 100,000 is good for you. But usually you intend to, you know, springboard off of a phase one into a phase two. And that's the intent of going through this program. There's other sources of $100,000 in cash from other places that might be less work than phase one. So just keep that in mind. And I think it's already been said, but to answer this who question, MTI has is it still the TAP team, the Technical Assistance Program? Is Karen still part of it? Karen West, many emails back and forth to Karen West. The TAP team, the Technical Assistance Program, they have people that are knowledgeable with each agency that Karen coordinates and brings in to help you with your application. People I don't know and never would know otherwise. So it was very helpful to have their input because they are all out there. Like, for example, ours, she works at Jackson Lab and she writes NIH proposals all the time. So having that expertise review your application, flag things that reviewers are going to review before they review them, very helpful. So our phase 1, 2, and 3 sort of went like this. When we were thinking about it before submitting our phase 1, we thought that phase 1 would be a mini phase 2. Phase 2, the big thing with phase 2, and it's right here, is the clinical trial and the new market that it would open this product up to, which would be a payer provider type market. We're going for wellness and looking for prescribing exercise essentially in a disabled for people with disabilities. And it's not something that has been done that we know of outside of recreational therapy. So we thought it was innovative and we had a chance to do something kind of big and to grow that and to have it be a new kind of therapy for people that have primarily balance issues and that wanted to exercise. And I mean, just as an aside, you've seen the walkers, right? The ones you kind of hunch over. People that have impairments like balance impairments from multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, got stroke, and what would be otherwise categorized as neurological disorders that impair balance, regularly fall using that style of walker. Those types of walkers are more for orthopedic issues, for weight bearing. You know, you've got a knee replacement, a hip replacement, some sort of thing that you're rehabbing with short term. It helps you bear your weight. But when you put somebody that's got a balance issue into a hunched over position, they tend to pitch forward if they have a balance issue. And they're not designed for exercise. So Liz was right on and Stephen were right on. You know, they came out of that world of using walkers and falling with them and not being able to exercise. So right away, like, okay, we have somebody that's evaluated this. We can put together a strong phase 1 at the very least, you know, to get through some usability studies, figure out if we're on the right track with this, talk with people that might have same issues as Liz. You know, part of the challenge was how many Liz's are there out there? And that was a question that was very difficult to answer. Just looking at literature and data, because you start to intersect the world of, all right, how many neurological impairments are there out there? Those numbers are easy. How many people like to exercise? Okay, so you just apply exercise percentages. Maybe that's wrong. And then you get to this idea of stigma, like how many people are disabled and don't want to be out exercising for one reason or another, and what is the reason for that? No numbers on that. And it weaves in with exercise numbers as well, because, you know, those two intersecting sets, you can't find data on it. So this is where we were trying to build a database, and just to see how big the potential pool of people were. And if it's a big problem, the NIH wants to know about it. They want it to be published, they want it to be out there. They're interested in seeing new treatments come along to help, you know, reduce issues with population health. That's their big mission. Payers aren't interested in that. Providers do what payers want. And by payers, I mean insurance companies, right? And if you know providers, doctors, you know how constrained they are by what payers will pay. So we saw this ultimately after phase 2 as providing access to a new market that's not just recreation, something that kind of spawns out of a medical market. And for reference, this is where we got after phase 1 here. We ultimately were not awarded phase 2. I can talk about that in the end. But we, after and during our phase 1, we were going to market with what came out of the phase 1. Like, we weren't waiting until phase 3 was done to bring this into a recreation market. You know, we thought something like this, we can go to bike shops. Hey, you've got old people out there, right? This is a bike. I mean, I knew that wasn't gonna be easy, but we had some success doing that. I mean, that's how we generated all our sales. So the next slide. I'll just put it out. So this was our timeline, and you can see it spans from 2013, 2014 to 2018. So that's a span of 4 years for phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was a series of 2 submissions before getting the award in our 3rd submission, I think. No, second resubmission, I lost track. We had 2 submissions, yeah, and we got after our resubmission. So starting January 2014 to October 2015. So this is where we executed our first contracts and first payment. So first submission to first payment, span of 2 years. If we had maybe scrapped some of this kind of rejection and resubmission, maybe, but I think we could have resubmitted, I think, in September, so we were only 3 months off of what we could have been anyway. So the real big time lag here is when you're discussed. So your committee or whoever's reviewing discusses your application. There's for NIH, there's sort of this sorting, like, yeah, we're gonna talk about this. No, we're not gonna talk about this in the scientific review. So there's a first round of like weeding applications out. And when you're discussed and scored, that's like, oh, bang, we're at least in that group. And then your score determines if you're funded or not, because there is a budget, like there's a 2% of the overall agency budget starts getting doled out to the best scores. So eventually they run out of money. And, you know, whatever that score is when you run out of money, it's called their pay line for that application pool. And we were right at pay line at 35. There were a lot of other applications that scored 25, 35. And so, because integers, it's not like 34.87, it's 35. There's probably 1,000 other applications that scored 35. So it's like, all right, are we 1? Are we 1,000? So this is where the TAP team was so useful, because Joanne, she said, okay, you're in NICHD, I don't know which, I don't remember the agency exactly. Like, they have a really small budget within NIH, but NIA, National Institute on Aging, has a bigger budget. Take your application, go to the program officer, write a document, address all of the feedback, criticism, and give it to that program manager as they're awarding 35s. Tell them you're fit for NIA, and see if you can get in the 35 pool. We did, and in July, I got a notification award. So that like little tip right there was really helpful. Never would have had that without some help. And then our actual phase one was only 6 months, the 6-month period of performance. We got an extension to the end of the year because we had and they'll do that. They'll offer one-time extensions if you're running behind or, things don't always go as planned in research and development. I don't have to tell you that probably. But they give you extra time to spend your money if you need it. So we've filled out the 2016 year with the award. And right about in here, we were starting our phase 2 application. So with kind of what we had learned so far on phase 1, we had submitted. So we were kind of submitting and we got our rejection kind of running along with the phase 1. And that's okay. You can be submitting for phase 2 while you're running your phase 1. This is where it started to get a little off track. And this is ultimately why we didn't get the award. It was kind of funny because we partnered with a research institution for our phase 2, which was Johns Hopkins. And all our reviewers were like, great, so glad you partnered with Johns Hopkins. Here's all the things wrong with your approach, all of which Johns Hopkins developed. Oh, shoot. And we all agreed we needed to pivot from their approach. And we went with a kind of a different approach, but not with as good of a team, this is where our own team, we had some disagreement on, what we should be doing with this study. And I wanted to go to the wellness market, and we had disagreements on like what that meant. So ultimately, we didn't have a very cohesive, coherent second submission, and it got rejected. And I was in this sort of awkward spot where, okay, I'm already in market with the recreational market of the product. I wasn't putting full time into this. I was selling. And so I was in this awkward position of, I've got to find a new proposal team if we really want to get this. And so ultimately I didn't pursue that. And so we just kind of stopped there. But there was an opportunity there if we were to find like the Johns Hopkins wellness and disabilities, and we were in line with the mission. They were focused on, is the FRE exercise, Johns Hopkins? Like, well, we know it's exercise already. Like, we don't need a bunch of physiologists measuring heart rates to prove this is exercise. I mean, maybe we do, but we need to do other things too. And so ultimately we just didn't have the right team to get to where I thought we needed to be. And I was going based on the feedback, like the feedback guides you to where you need to go in your resubmission. And I would say with the first submission, and this is just a kind of an example of like the type of feedback you receive. They're probably like 20 pages worth of feedback from 3 different reviews. You can tell if the reviewers are coaching you to submit another application just based on the feedback you get. And the phase 1, it was very much that way. The phase 2, it was also that way. It's just, we didn't end up going in a direction that they pointed us in. And that was ultimately what I think. We didn't even get discussed in the second submission. So, I mean, that's the big takeaway. If your reviewers are giving you feedback, follow it, because your resubmission is going to be tagged to your original submission when you go to resubmit. So the same reviewers are probably even going to look at it. So don't just ignore the feedback. Take it seriously. Yeah, I guess that summarizes my experience. Like at the very end there with the resubmission, but this is sort of just a broad summary. I mean, if you're thinking about like now about SBIR, hopefully you've kind of got a better perspective. It's a great source of non-diluting OPM. Does anybody know what OPM is? Oh, yeah. So with NIH, I don't know if I've got these numbers right, but when we applied, there was a 150% above the statutory limit allowance. So we got 225 for the phase 1, even though it says 150. And some agencies are allowed to exceed that, like especially health, I think NSF as well, but, you know, at amounts right now, that's somewhere around 306,000 for your phase 1 and 2 million for your phase 2 with an NIH. I think they probably have some of the bigger ones. You won't see that in DOA, but it's a great source of cash. It's cash, it's a grant, it's other people's money. They're not asking for equity. Yeah, the timeline's long. So if you don't have flexibility in getting to market, you know, this might be a problem for you. If like, this is critical path, developing whatever you have, and, you know, you need the money before you can go to market, like, and you want to get to market because it's either competitive or your runway depends on it. You're like full-time in this, and I can't wait 2 years, you know, if that's what it comes down to. It might not be the approach you want to take right now. And if you get another source of cash, like ready to go, yeah. Certainly it could be something you do in parallel if it's not critical, you know, just submit that application. If you get it, you get it. And 2 years from now, you got some cash rolling in from another source to keep going in a different direction. We made incredible progress with the product development, and understanding the customers, the market in the phase 1. So even after just the phase 1, we had a large body of knowledge and a better product than we had before. You know, I mean, that's what $225,000 does. It gets spent, and I was impressed with what we got out of it. I actually went in not expecting to get as much as we did, but we got a lot. But expect rejection. You're gonna get told no a lot of different ways, and I mean, get comfortable with it. Hopefully you've been told that. And then this part here requires an agency fit. So if whatever you have for some reason just is not in line at all, like if it's a chocolate bar, I don't know, you know, maybe there's a problem. But you'd be surprised, like stepping back from an idea though, sometimes where you could fit, if you just ask kind of the bigger questions, maybe a science project comes out of it, maybe there's an engineering project that comes out of it, and some agencies will fund engineering projects. But like thinking bigger, you know, make sure you go through the exercise of thinking bigger before you say, there's no agency that's good for me, it's just an fit. I think that's the end there.
You have any questions?
We had an idea of like a carbon neutral, fully automated production facility or something simple, like flooring. This be the path that, because it's a pipe dream, right? I would want to put my own money into it. But would this be a good avenue to do?
Yeah, I would look into the Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture. There's gotta be some topic areas that might fit that, and the TAP team would help with that fit. But certainly, yeah, if there's gonna be a technology that comes out of developing sort of the green facility that isn't on the market right now, yeah, it's a good fit. The big thing is the innovative part, right? If there's a solution out there that exists that can, you know, bring it to life, your dream to life, and it's already out there, and it's just a matter of finding it somewhere in ether, it's not a good fit, you know, because it's out there already. And there might be other resources for it though. That's not to say that, you know, you can't make your pipe dream come true. It might not be SBIR. But definitely if there's an element of innovation and it's not out there.
So it's not, there can't be an Apple like a prototype somewhere out there.
If it's, yeah, I wouldn't say, yeah, if it's like in the corners of the internet, you're still okay. If it's something that somebody down the road has already done, yeah, you know what I mean? So, yeah, if you can make the case for it's innovative or it's just different, you're in the green there. Yeah.
I just curious on the timeline more. I appreciate that whole representation. Do you think that was more, for your kind of the agency that you guys applied in, which you kind of mentioned at the start, was there's a lot of scientific research that goes into it. Do you think that relates to your timeline, or would you say that's pretty customary regardless of, you know, the industry and the product?
Yep. The timeline, I would say, with NIH, my experience with the DOE submission was there was a lot less time required to put the application together, that phase 1 application together. So I would say there's the different agencies, there might be a different burden, kind of relative one to the other. They're all gonna be, there's certain things in the application package that are required across all of them. Certainly with, NIH though, there was additional stuff I had never seen. So whether it's 8 weeks or 12 weeks or 6 weeks to put together that application, you know, that's it. But the funding, timelines are 3 times a year, no matter what. So you've got a January, an April, and a September or something like that, with every agency, and they might not be those dates, but 3 times a year. So no matter what, your kind of timeline in between getting your submission in and hearing, you might have enough time, like July, for us, it was September. You might have enough time to submit and respond to all of that, but if you really have to pivot, you might not make it, and that's why we waited until December. We knew we weren't gonna get it together in time for the September submission. So same as in phase 2. We waited almost a year though, so we could have crunched that and pushed that more this way. But I was distracted by other things. So we could have made a better go at this, and that could have been more scrunched, but the phase 1, I don't know if we could have done better. Because award to first payment, that's April to January. So, well, sorry, I guess July to January, that's 6 months, 5 months. So there wasn't a whole lot we could do to squeeze. I think 3 months was about the best we could have done.
Brian, can you talk about, like, we always hear this about SBIR, and it always comes down to, oh, you have to have a good program manager. Can you talk about the relationship you've had with your program manager?
Yeah, we had 2 because we applied and then we shopped. So we applied, I think it was NICHD, National Institute of Childhood Diseases. Because the scientific review group that we needed was under this agency. Like, okay, this is weird. So we had our program manager, Teresa, was very helpful. And she saw the issue and she's like, you're not the only applicants having this issue. You want to have your application reviewed by this scientific review group because it's relevant, but it's under the wrong agency. Don't worry, submit it and we'll resolve it if you get the award. So then once we got to this point of shopping, we were talking to NIA, Lyndon Joseph, and we had talked to him first, and he pointed us to Teresa, and eventually we got bounced back to him. But we ended up maintaining contact mostly with Teresa the whole time, because she knew who was going to be reviewing it. So yeah, we had to have some conversations and we had Zoom meetings, a couple before submitting, which is great, by the way. I would definitely recommend, there's a, when you look at whatever agency you have, there's a contact person at the bottom of your topic area or whatever it might be. They will respond if you reach out. And it's worth doing that in a way that's helpful for you to put your application together. I wouldn't ask them questions on the topic. The way that we got the most out of it was working with our NIH contact from the TAP team. Say, hey, we want to approach a program manager. I've never done this before. What's the best way to do it? And she helped us put together the best way to reach out to them and was there during the meeting so that we could get the most out of the meeting. Really positive. They want this. The ones that we talked to wanted to give money away. They wanted you to be successful. They're not the reviewers. And once it's reviewed and there's a score, there's nothing they can do. Virtually nothing they can do to get you to get the award other than kind of point you in the right direction. They can't override, but they will guide you along.
How did you use your interagency downtime, particularly in phase 1 for a project management standpoint, and any perspectives or recommendations on that, or what would you like to?
My downtime, would that be between applications?
Not checking your emails.
Yeah, well, there was downtime that, you're once you submit, this was kind of downtime, rejection. So, yeah, I had not quit my day job at that point. I was still an engineering consultant. I was not full in on this. It's okay, we need money to get this product development going. If you really want to spin this off into a commercial product, we need to understand some things about the market. So I had looked at other sources of grant funding. I looked at MTI, and around this time I was submitting an MTIC grant application to do some of the basic product development, but I knew that wasn't going to be enough to launch, but it was enough to get a prototype so that I could then bring this to some physical therapists and some trade shows and, so I was doing that while all that was going, for sure. So I was the one that was the entrepreneur in this, even though sort of my first go at entrepreneurship. Like I'd spent so many hours developing other people's products. In 2013, I was like, fine, this is my chance. Like I want to do this. This is a good way to launch into it. And so I was the entrepreneur through all of this. So you're wearing every hat as an entrepreneur, until you get a team that's helping you through that. And even still, you might be wearing every hat, because if you're with a team that's like really embedded, you're all kind of working in some similar areas.
Where's the bike now?
I was just gonna ask that, Susan.
Give all the credit to Emalee.
Where's the Afari now? So we exited, I exited, I was an inventor listed on a patent for this ultimately. So I exited with a royalty to the new company that's it. And they're selling it, marketing it. It's Mobella, and they're out of New York. It is a customer. So it's like a customer had a bunch of money and was like so excited about this, he wanted to take control of it. Like, this is weird. Couldn't have guessed this. He had some ideas for other products, and he's the whole story was this came about because our two, Liz and Steven, they wanted this to get some attention in the Cooper Hewitt in New York. They have a disabilities expo where they feature a lot of different products for disabilities, and they wanted it to be in the Cooper Hewitt. I said, okay, fine, we've got like 5 or 6 of these, we'll send one down. It can just sit there, and it's a museum exhibit, so it's like, it can't be touched. Like, okay, it's a little silly, so it's a piece of art, like, not me, I'm just like, whatever, this is silly. Like, if they want it, they want it. Like, but for me, it's like, if I saw this, I'd want to try it. Like, this isn't a piece of art to me. It's like, I want to see how this does for me. Anyway, it's sitting there, and this guy named Henry sees it. He's like, oh my God, that is amazing. And he like tours the museum frequently, and he gets these ideas for like products that could help people with disability. And he's been doing this for many years since he retired as a patent attorney. He was disabled himself. He had Guillain-Barré syndrome, so this debilitating neurological disease. Liked to exercise, lived in New York his whole life. And so he's like, wow, that is exactly what I want. So he contacted me, got him one, he tried it out. He's like, yes, I'm ready to launch my business now. Like, what? What are you talking about? So he talked to me about partnering, and long story short, it was like, okay, well, if you have the crew he did, he had a team of people that really could market this in a way that I couldn't. And I was separately putting together a proposal for, trying to do the same thing. And it was the right opportunity for me. So I took off on it, and now I'm back to engineering. And I personally, it took me a while to admit that that's where my interest lies. I like the inventing, the creating, the building, the making. But when it came to like just dreading doing another trade show, it's like, okay, I guess I'm done.
What were your key budget line items submitted in phase 1?
There was a mix of for studies for this type of thing, for looking at a clinical trial, and even like the mini trial we did in phase 1, there was a lot of money spent on labor, people to run the studies, people to design the studies, even just recruiting people for focus groups and clinical trials is hilarious. Like you have to pay them, but just enough so that you're not paying them. Like, you can't can't wander into the realm of influence, but you have to compensate them for being there. So like designing things like that and getting the people to do the recruitment, that was a kind of a big sub-award that went to a clinical research center, even in phase one.
I'm sure the template for all of it has something, they want your budget to be specific.
The budget is, the budget itself, it's, labor, materials, if you've got any capital items, which are usually unallowed in phase ones, like things you're gonna, like for your bit, you were saying something about your building, like that wouldn't be allowed in a phase one. You wouldn't be able to like buy a piece of equipment that would be like part of an HVAC system in a phase one, that would be capital equipment, but materials and supplies to make like 3 iterations of products. We had a local fabricator, machinist and welder making frames and cutting them up and remaking them, cutting them up and remaking them. Tons of bike parts are purchased that are just, kind of in my graveyard right now. So a lot of parts and supplies, and of course your time. You can get compensated for your time. Kind of back to your original question, how many can you submit? How many can you be awarded at the same time? You could be 100% burdened for 6 months if you want to be, on an award. But then you probably can't be 100% burdened on a second award that's co-running with it. So, your labor is completely and totally fair game. So you don't want to undersell that.
Just out of curiosity from phase one perspective, when you're looking at focus groups and the usability, because there's an aspect of risk, is there kind of strategy or thought process behind selecting who the focus group should actually be?
Yeah.
Pivot?
Oh, yeah, it's huge. Like, for a medical product like this, we wanted to make sure that there's a certain criteria that's satisfied, like, they'd have to be eligible to use it, right? They have to have the need, and it becomes iterative because, like, what if you misdefine your population when you design your study? Like, let's say for this, if it would be a complete swing and a miss, we said people with OA would be the only ones using it, osteoarthritis, because really it should include a lot of different types of disabilities, disorders, diseases, whatever it might be. But NIH likes focus. They would rather have you submit, I think, a study that's for OA, another phase one for MS, another phase one for Parkinson's, another phase one for stroke, for this, like just taking this as an example. When you're looking at focus groups that kind of take the medical element out of it, and you're looking at more consumer product, I can't tell you how, like, I didn't do any of the focus group and the clinical trial group study, that design of, I did nothing related to that to submit this award. I had some input, especially in phase 2. But you definitely, need, if this isn't something you've done, that was a huge part of our application, for this. And this might not be applicable to really other, what you might be working on, but for us, that was a big deal in the application, developing the study.
In your timeline, when you had, executing contract before the board and the first payment, like what kind of contracts, or what do you mean? Like, is it a punch list of what contracts? What do you have?
Oh, yeah. You're signing a contract with the government that you're going to execute your specific aims in good faith. So when it actually comes down to signing this, the government's going to pay you money to do stuff that you said you were going to do in your proposal. That's essentially what it comes down to. You're in good faith going to, it's a contract for services, essentially, I would say. There's other things that are wrapped up into the contract that relate to who owns the information when you're done, what will be public versus what you will hold on to. And so that I would say that wasn't a big hurdle for this because we didn't get that far in phase 1. There's a lot of stuff that we already had as intellectual property before going in. What the government owned and what they were interested in owning was, or making sure that the company didn't hold on to, was any of the population health stuff that came out of it. So are you going to allow your researchers to publish company? And you have to usually, the government says, yes, you shall allow them to publish stuff that's not proprietary. That can break down in some cases, but it didn't for us. And sometimes they require you to specify that at the time you execute your contract, like what do you anticipate at the end of this will be proprietary? And what will be allowed to be published in the public realm. But as far as what you're signing up for, there's all the requirements that federal agencies have of anybody that's contracting, there's like, all the equal opportunity type things you agree to as a company that's accepting federal dollars, state dollars. So it's like that type of language in the contract. As far as like your performance, it's mainly just you're in good faith executing your specific aims.
But so you actually have to fund that before they give you the award?
You have to execute you have to execute the contract before you get the award. You don't have to fund it. No.
Well, so executing the contract isn't finishing.
No, this is before you start.
Okay.
Yeah.
So executing the contracts, you're literally talking about just the process after you've got the award to sign all the paperwork, basically,
Yeah.
like after you get a mortgage and you have 300 pages. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, but you're not in
Took a
debt.
while.
You're not in debt.
Yeah. That's better than you had to say the fabricator and get paid back. That would be more killer.
No, you try to, you make sure that when you're talking to other people that are expecting to get paid as a part of the sub award, that, they're gonna get paid when you get paid. Like you can pay them before if you want, but, no, that's on you. Like, there should be no expectation that anybody's gonna get funding from this award under a sub award that they get paid before you get paid. So, their period of performance might be delayed a few weeks, a month before, like, for example, when we started signing contracts with the government in October, we were also signing contracts with our sub awardees, with my company and sub awardees, like, this is what we agreed to, this was your scope of work. You will be paid upon these milestones, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm executing my contract with University of Maine, with EMCC's clinical trial center, and maybe with my fabricator and machinists. I'm gonna need 5 of these. I need them, by November, April, that sort of thing. Yeah. But this here was a lag between when the government first paid and, when we signed the contract with the government.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then the pay line shopping, because I kind of remember that was, you're getting ahead in the line of the other 35 scores, right?
Getting in line with the other.
What was that again? I mean, so somebody told you there was a way to contact them and how did that actually?
So what happened was the agency, so NIH, NICHD, and then NIA. So under NIH, there's multiple institutes. And each institute has its own budget as well. So once an institute runs out of money to pay the awards that are in its institute, you can then take your award to another institute and see, hey, do you have any availability amongst your 35s to fund this one? And it has to be applicable. So ours was completely applicable to NIA. And when you submit your application, you list all of the potential agencies that your award could be applicable to, and there usually would be multiple, so that you could fit in, as each agency sort of operates with their own budget as well. So that's very siloed.
Okay, do we have any last questions before we finish up? Fantastic. Well, thank you to Ryan and Emalee. This conversation has been recorded and will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel. I'd just like to give another thank you to our sponsors, Bricks Torque and Innovation Space, the Harold L. Fund Institute for Business Innovation at Thomas College, and Valley Beverage. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.